Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to Art Power HK, a collaborative campaign from the Hong Kong art community celebrating the arts in Hong Kong in 2020. I'm Kiri Sinclair, Art Power HK working group member, and I am delighted that you are joining us for the 6th installment of the weekly Art Power HK online talks program. Today's discussion is the first in a 3-part series focusing on Hong Kong artists. Each of the discussions will be moderated by some of Hong Kong's leading art writers and editors, Catherine Shaw, Tinny Cheng, and Judy, and feature Hong Kong artists from across mediums and generations. Kicking off the program today, independent editor, consultant, and art critic Catherine Shaw will lead a conversation with artists Jiaru Wu, Peter Yuill, and Shane Aspergren as they discuss working in Hong Kong. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator for today, Catherine Shaw. Catherine is an independent editor, consultant, and architecture design and art critic. Catherine writes for SCMP, Wallpaper, Zaluma, Design Anthropology, and the list goes on, and is a regular speaker and moderator at many art and design events. Catherine, it is a delight to have you with us today, and I will now pass it over to you.
Kerry, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today, both to the panel and to anyone else who has logged in and joined our webinar. Right, Peter, Jiaru, and Shane represent a wonderful range of art from music and drawing to painting and sculpture. And what I'd like to explore today is how their different types of creative work in Hong Kong has been affected by the global pandemic. So this sets a very local Hong Kong context, but obviously has relevance beyond the city. So just to set the context, and for people who may not know each one of the artists talking today, I'd like to start by inviting each one of the panelists to very briefly describe what they do, just in 1 or 2 sentences. Shane, would you like to go first?
Sure. A large part of my work is coming from music and sound practices, but I work across a variety of mediums, and yeah, I mean that's kind of the very short version, I guess.
Great. Short is good.
Yeah.
And Peter, what about you? How would you describe yourself to someone who does not know your work?
Well, I'm a painter. I work with primarily ink and different metallic paints, but I also do large-scale murals and different types of projects like that. I primarily do like very complex geometric, meditative work.
Great, and that's one of your pieces in your background.
Indeed.
It's fantastic. And Jiaru, how would you describe what you do?
I basically do mixed media art. Depends on the topics or my mood. So it's video, installation, sometimes paintings.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Right, Peter, can I start with you? Could you
Sure.
tell us about how you usually work? Where is your studio located? And could you possibly describe it for people?
Yeah, I mean, my studio is in Taiwan. It's pretty fantastic, actually. It's got high ceilings and it's a corner unit. It's got floor-to-ceiling windows on both sides that face the ocean. So it's as far as places that you are stuck being quarantined inside of, it's probably not that bad.
And Peter, you have said in the past that you prefer to work alone, quietly. I mean, could you describe generally how you feel about that and why you prefer to work in almost like self-isolation already? You're clearly an expert in this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, because I get into a very intense sort of meditative zone when I'm working. So, and I'm a very social, you know, scattery kind of person if I'm out and about. So I can't focus if there's really people around. You know, I'll just start chatting and talking, and I can't get any work done. It's much easier in my studio. It's fine because I don't really have many guests over here. But you know, if I'm doing projects on site, you know, painting for a hotel or for something like that, it's very difficult if there's people buzzing around me. So I usually I'll put headphones in and I'll just completely tune out because I can't. Once I start talking, then I get completely distracted and I can't focus, and I'll just be chatting and chatting and chatting, and then I'll have a beer and then I'll chat more, and I won't get any work done.
So, I mean, in terms of, you know, feeling isolated, whereas some artists might feel that that's a new element in the way that they work. For you in Hong Kong, you're quite unusual. You've got the space, which is always difficult in our city, plus you like working on your own. So how has the pandemic affected you then? I mean, do you feel less focused on the future? I mean, have you taken up any new activities or anything like that?
No, I mean, it hasn't really affected me that much in the sense that, I mean, it was both good and bad. Like at first, because I was preparing to do a solo show at Art Central, the pandemic at first was a good thing because I had to work anyways. So it kind of cleared out a lot of the distractions. Like I get really bad FOMO if there's a super fun party or there's a really cool thing going on and I don't get to go to it. So when that all kind of got canceled, it actually allowed me to kind of just focus and work for, you know, a couple of months, which I really needed to do. But then the downside was all that work was for naught because Art Central was canceled. So it kind of then it came full circle. And then I did organized to do a backup show at Soho House, and then we had to postpone that, and it was kind of, so it's just kind of been a little bit of a disaster. But I mean, all things considered, it's not that bad. But
it's not like you're in a situation where you can't access materials, or
no. I have all my stuff here. I'm quite fastidious about having a lot of the things that I need. I like buying different tools and stuff, so I had, you know, in preparation, I had all the paper and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so as the self-isolation expert here so far, what would be your tips for people who find that lack of connection difficult? I mean, you mentioned headphones. I mean, I presume that is something to help when you're out. But how do you manage that lack of connection with people?
Well, that's one thing that I struggle with, because, you know, I'm very sort of hyperbolic when it comes to these types of things. I like to be completely alone working in isolation, and then I love to be surrounded by people having drinks and having fun. And one of the reasons I love Hong Kong is I love just weaving through the city and walking around and having all the people around me and the energy and the lights and the chaos and sound stuff. I really feed off of that energy. Mm-hmm. So I did struggle a lot with that. Like, you know, normally I would do, if I'm working, I'll work for 4 or 5 days straight without going outside, and then I'll spend a couple of days walking around Kowloon or going out on little adventures on my own. So I had to cut all of that out, which, you know, kind of made me go a little bit crazy.
So then how do you source that kind of inspiration? Are you spending more time on like social media, Instagram, for people who are out there, you know, doing interesting things?
Yeah, I mean, I might have been also a bit of a bad person, because like I would go out for walks by myself. I mean, I'm quite careful about always wearing a mask and I don't touch anything, but I would still go for like walks around my neighborhood or through the city, kind of, especially like, you know, late at night, I would go for like a little walk by myself and just kind of walk around to get outside and, you know, not really interact with people, but at least be out, you know, doing something, scouting around at night and getting into trouble.
It's interesting because it's about the city. It's about the architecture as well, and the light and the forms. All of these things are feed into a lot of what you do. So I suppose being able to still dip into that is quite useful. Yeah.
I am a sponge for the sort of ambient frequency around me. Like I I am energized by the energy that is around me, and I can be demotivated if there's negative energy around. So that's why one of the reasons I like it here is because there's so much, you know, nonstop going around. I can feed off of that energy, and it kind of fills me up.
Yeah.
Which makes it quite difficult when you can't go outside.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's kind of the same.
Yeah. Jiaru, can I bring you in to this? How do you usually work, and what's been the biggest challenge for you?
Normally I would just work in the studio, but for the last few months I just stay at home.
Yeah. And where is your studio?
I can show you this photo here. Used to be like this. So
Yeah.
But now I need to stay in a smaller space at my house. Wait.
And has that been, oh, that's great.
Smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has that been a particular challenge for you? The space element of it, or the lighting, or what issue has been the most difficult for you?
Actually, it's not that difficult for me. Mm-hmm. I enjoy my solitude here. I can work everywhere, actually. Yeah.
But does it affect, I mean, some of the pieces that you work on are quite large. So I suppose in some ways, by necessity, the space confines what you can do.
Yeah. At home, I would just work mostly on the video works, like digital work and less spatial demanding work. Okay. I just put all the big sculptures and painting in my studio and maybe handle them later after whatever is happening now.
And has the pandemic sort of coaxed you to try anything new?
Yeah, I've been thinking about some virtual reality program with some of the programmer, like game, like video game or virtual reality kind of projects. Yeah, it'd be fun.
Do you feel like, I mean, one of the things that people always comment on in Hong Kong is how madly busy we always are, and how people want things, you know, tomorrow. You get commissioned to do something, they want it immediately. Do you feel like this change in timing, like people seem to be in less of a rush, is that giving you any new kinds of opportunities to think more deeply about your work?
Yes, yeah. Actually, I have more time to reconnect to myself, because I think Hong Kong is too fast for me, honestly. Like sometimes I feel guilty when I'm lazy or just chill at home, because everyone's so busy, so productive, and having exhibitions everywhere. And I'm totally a socially awkward person. But it's kind of like the reality pushed me to be fast. Yes. To catch up or anything. But now I'm just like, everyone's slow, so I just be myself. It's fine.
People are starting to understand the benefits of a slower way of approaching this. But I mean, much of your art reflects the world around us. I mean, you have a lot of your paintings in particular reflecting Hong Kong. So how are you accessing that sort of inspiration?
You mean
are you talking to friends? Are you looking at social media, reading the news? How are you kind of accessing information about the world around you?
Just social media. We are internet. Yeah. I kind of getting more information addictive now. Like I worry about what's happening outside, and this is like not an ideal way to be alone, actually, because we have to handle emotional issues and all kinds of stuff. I live alone, so I have to reach out virtually sometimes. or make more art.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because even, sort of extroverts like myself, I'm always out, always seeing people, talking to people. This time at home and working, I always work from home, so it's not a huge change for me. But the change in pace outside means that even extroverts, when they go back outside and communicate with people, I can't wait to get back. And if there are too many people around, I'm like,
me too.
I don't want to go out. I don't want to be in that crowd. It's almost like we've reset our baseline of what's comfortable. Do you feel that, Jiaru?
True.
I mean, it's about the control, isn't it? Like you like being at home, you like being able to work in isolation, a bit like Peter, but at the same time, it's about wanting more control of when you can access the things that interest you.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, and I hate to use that phrase, when things get back to normal, because I think there is no going back to how things were before.
Yeah. Right.
But when we come out of, more of these strict controls, do you think that you will try to maintain some of the quieter, slower pace that you've become more accustomed to now?
I would try. Because I would try. I totally, stay calm after whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the questions that I write a lot about architecture and design. So I see this across the board, from architects, product designers, through to artists. I'm all saying they just don't know why they got so busy in the past. They just don't know how it happened. Because they're still productive now and they're still producing work, and they think, even though it's not pleasant, the work is actually, they feel their work is better because they obviously have more time. They can edit it, think about it, and spend more time.
Yeah. But sadly, the price is too high. Like, we have to
Exactly.
suffer this virus thing to understand that simple.
Exactly. Why could we not have worked this out without this, and maybe being better prepared for this kind of a situation? Shane, can I go to you now? And I want to ask you, what were you working on when COVID-19 broke out?
I was working on a couple of things. Actually, Jiaru and I were working on we have a group exhibition that hopefully it's still under, we're trying to see when that actually might happen, but we had something planned that we were working on that's now been delayed. I had an installation that I was working on for Hong Kong Arts Center. Mm-hmm. And then I was also you're familiar with the kind of online meditation project that I've been working.
Yes, it's available on your website.
Which was always born out the other side of things that I was working on at the moment. Even the installation that I was working on for Art Center is related. I mean, it's definitely an installation that had been structured to be a kind of relational artwork, something interactive for the viewer. It was kind of immersive in an installation.
Yeah.
So those were the main things that I was working on at the time.
And how has the pandemic affected your life and your work?
Well, it caused me to kind of go back to some practices that I had abandoned a while back. Not really abandoned, but abandoned at least for the time being.
Yes.
In the past, I was doing a lot of recorded music, a lot of recorded sound, and I really lost interest in that over the last couple of years. I kind of I tried to stop approaching making music in that sense, and I was really much more interested in relational aesthetics, in live performance, in how to interact with or engage with an audience in another way, and kind of abandoning this isolated, by myself in the studio, recording things, and taking that into a more performative and another context in installation artworks, for example, that we're asking the viewers to become a part of the artwork or to kind of interact with the pieces. But yeah, the past couple of months I've kind of gone in reverse and taken on this project of recording the things that I had really only intended as being a live experience before. And I mean, I did realize that it's another approach, and it's interesting to work in that way too, and to kind of be forced to go back into a practice that I was wanting to get away from and find a way to do it that I can somehow enjoy, I think.
Yeah. So for you, your work has almost been a kind of re-evaluation, a sort of deeper reflection on something that you had been doing before, and looking at it within the confines or the challenges that you have at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. But it is, I am approaching it in a different way. I mean, I think I'm trying to have maybe a healthier relationship than I had in the past or something. And
yeah,
it's a challenge, but it's been good for me in a lot of ways. So yeah, I'm trying to see the positive aspects of the situation that we're all in.
Yeah, and I suppose the other really good thing about Hong Kong is because, we are essentially a village. Everyone knows everyone. So if you go out, you tend to meet other artists, and there's a lot of sort of cross-pollination and support and everything, because it's a fairly small community. Do you feel like that is something that you really notice missing now? And how are you making up for that, or keeping in touch with other creative people?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been, this whole past year coming out of the time when even exhibitions and funding for projects started to dwindle a bit in the fall due to the ongoing protests. And then, having that be amplified by being one of the first places in the world to be hit with Corona. Yeah, I feel like this last year has been a bit strange in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, Jiaru and I have we're both working out of Art House, and we see some people there. The studio was shut down for a while, and everybody was working at home. But even now, I think people are there a lot less than they were. I mean, pre-January.
Yeah. So, I get the feeling like some of the most interesting art that I've seen in Hong Kong in the last 10 years in particular, have been coming out with the protest art and street art as well. Really, really interesting graffiti and, some very, very powerful pieces. And, a lot of people are rather blithely saying, the pandemic, everyone's going to be coming out with amazing artwork at the end. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like this is pushing artists, not just yourself, but artists in Hong Kong to maybe think in a more creative way? Will it come up with better art?
I don't know. I mean, better is relative, of course. I think it's going to be different for sure. I mean, as Jiaru was saying, she's taking a much more introspective approach. I'm approaching things in a different way, and I think it's different partially because also I think in Hong Kong, a lot of people who are working in any kind of let's say, creative field, in order to survive here, you're also engaging in projects that are just not happening right now. So
yeah,
I think that for me, I'm approaching things also in a different way, because I'm having, and everybody I think is having the time to just think, okay, well, what do I really want to do, and what's important to put out there right now, or to what do I want to do if the situation's not the same after this as well, because we might come back to a different city, and surely we're coming back to a different world, and how different is yet to be seen. But I think, I don't know. We can open up a whole conversation about economic systems and.
No, exactly. I mean, on the one hand, we have this opportunity to think about what's important. And then on the other hand, we still need to pay rent in one of the most expensive cities in the world. In fact, it is the most expensive city. So in Hong Kong, we always have that pressure, but it's become even more extreme now. And obviously, art galleries, museums, dealers are all looking very much to digital platforms as the savior for art. I'd like to go, to each one of you to ask what your thoughts are on this. But Shane, what about you? How effective is a digital platform for your work in particular?
I think it's, relative to the world that we're living in, it's extremely important.
Yeah.
In a lot of aspects. I personally have a hard time engaging with that, like, especially. I don't know if it's the older I become or just the fact that I'm really more interested in human interaction and kind of personal interaction, I suppose, than online. I mean, I know you can there's the potential to reach a lot of people through digital means, but there's all the internet is oversaturated with content, and
exactly.
And also, I think a lot of work is reduced to something that it could be otherwise if it's on just a 2D image on a website, or some recorded sound, or anything really.
Exactly. I mean, we've all seen beautiful pieces in a catalogue and then gone to the actual exhibition and gone, what? I know that's not what I felt it was. Meanwhile, it's been a beautiful photograph. So, there is something that is very special about, particularly when you have the artist in the room with the art, and there is a relationship, that the gallery or a museum, a physical presence really does obviously add to that experience. But I mean, a lot of the dealers, even though online buying has been quite a small fraction of the overall dealer market, it's, so many of them are really looking to that as the sort of critical change for them. And they all seem to be investing in these online viewing rooms as their priority. Peter, what about you on this? Because for your work in particular, I met you while you were drawing for a show, I think, at Pearl Lamb's gallery. And, I was just absolutely fascinated. I could have watched you all day because of how precise and intricate it was. I mean, it made me realize just how long it must take to produce something like you produce. So, from a photograph, like, the picture, your background behind is absolutely stunning in its scale, but how do you get across that intricate detail? That's so difficult to do online.
I mean, I think the honest answer is I don't. I mean, I try to take the best photographs that I can and I put on my website, but I mean, my personal opinion is that the whole online gallery, online viewing room, online walkthrough doesn't work. I think it's an idea born more out of desperation, because, you know, places like Art Basel, they had to figure out something to do in a short period of time. But I don't enjoy doing it. You know, anyone I've talked to hasn't really been wowed by it. I think it's an interesting idea, but I don't think in practice that it really works that well. Because, I mean, really, the thing about especially paintings or physical artwork is you need to be in the room with it. You need to look at it.
Yeah.
You need to get a sense of the texture and the material and the color and the energy that it gives off, and the scale of it, the size, the way it is in relation to you and how you feel in the room. And online, that just doesn't work, you know. Yeah. And online has existed since the internet started. Artists have had websites since the late 90s.
Exactly.
You know, it's not anything new to look at a painting on a website, but it's never. I mean, I think I do some sales of people online, but, you know, I think that's quite a risky maneuver. To buy a painting from just looking at a photograph seems crazy. Yeah. You know, because you need to look at it. You need to basically like meld with it. You know, it needs to become part of you.
And it's the same. It's the same. I suppose it's slightly different for sculptors. You know, if you're sculpting a large piece, video is actually a very effective form of creating that sense of scale. But even so, when I'm reviewing something now that's architecture, I can't fly to South Korea to check a new shopping center or a new stadium. I have to, and it makes me very uneasy to write about something that I haven't walked through myself, because
for sure,
what you pick up is by touching the wall, you know, by going through a space and how the light works with it. And you just don't get that from a photograph.
Absolutely. And photographs can be manipulated. They can be doctored. People edited them in Photoshop. I mean, especially if you're looking at architectural renderings and stuff like that. It really is not the same. I mean, I think it's something that it's a good little temporary measure. You know, if people are desperate to look at paintings, they can kind of do that. I think it's more like you might look at something that you think you might be interested in and sort of earmark it for later, for when things calm down. Then you can go look at it in person. So you can kind of plan ahead, like, ooh, I want to check these out when I can. But as a replacement for the way things are done, I can't see it ever happen. I mean, in my world, it wouldn't. Other people might feel differently, but
maybe it's moving much more towards a situation where it goes hand in hand. So for people to be finding out about artists, or maybe like for me, after meeting you at Pearl Land's gallery, I went away and I checked up on what other works you've done, and I check your CV, and then we'd come back and you and I would talk, and then we stayed in touch. And then when I see your work, I know it's your work because you've got a wider range of what you do. So, I mean, it's very useful. It's essential for someone like me to know what a wider range an artist is producing, or what else someone else is producing. But nothing, basically the buying of art is a very seductive, intimate experience. Even at the art fair with 3 billion people around you, it's when you meet the artist and you're standing in front of a piece, and that's when particularly new buyers fall in love with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, things like Instagram and stuff are great. I love Instagram. I'm always finding amazing new artists that I love, or different creative people, or, photographers and stuff. I love doing that, but that's, I think, a totally separate realm. Even like you said, you have a glass of champagne, you're getting schmoozed by the gallerist, and you're feeling good. Or you're talking to the artist, and you feel you connect to the artist. You get what they're talking about. You feel that sense of kinship and the energy and stuff, and then like this is most people, when you're buying artwork, unless you're a major collector, you're buying it because you want to buy a little piece of that artist. You like that person, and it's because they made it, right? That's why you want it.
Yeah.
And without actually talking to the person or getting a feel for that relationship, it's hard to commit to something. I mean, otherwise you could just go to IKEA and buy the big photograph of New York Times Square, like
exactly, because then it's purely decorative. And actually, I think what happens, people who are buying art for their homes in particular, it is a love affair with that, with both the artist and the piece, because that's what you live with, especially now that we spend so much more time in our home. It's become even more important that the picture on my wall is one that I can look at and makes me feel really great.
Absolutely.
Jiaru, what about you? What do you think about the digital side of things for your art in particular?
I mean, online exhibiting something is okay for me, because for those work are designed to show on internet or something, videos, sound pieces, and other digital form of art, animation, those are okay for me. But for installation or painting, sculptures, I think it's better to see it in person, like in 3D world is better. It's totally better. But I think online selling is okay for me. It's just a platform, like online shopping. I get used to this thing already. And it's a trend, like we can't deny it.
Yes, yeah, it is an essential part, and So, Jiaru, after the pandemic, a lot of people are predicting that many of the smaller galleries might close, and that the art world that we've known could be much smaller once it reappears. So what are your thoughts about the traditional art fair? Because, of course, in Hong Kong, it's the all-important Art Basel and Art Central. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel that's going to be?
I think that's totally possible. Like, everything gets smaller or flatter. And I think the technology will catch up the steps. Like, for example, we might try to be as real as possible to the real world in the virtual world, if you know what I mean. Like, all the geek stuff, like new tech toys we can experience more realistic 3D worlds at home, or a virtual reality. I think that's the trend. And it's a really sad fact. But I don't know.
What do you think of the relationship between artists and galleries? Do you think that will change? I mean, Hong Kong has really only been in this kind of relationship between artists based in Hong Kong and galleries at an international kind of level. How do you see that relationship changing? Or do you see it changing? Do you see it becoming, maybe galleries becoming more important for artists, or less important?
For me, I think it's less important, because internet is free and open and transparent. But I think galleries still has their values and like their, how to say, their functions.
Okay. What about Peter or Shane? Do you have any comment on that?
I just wanted to ask Jiaru if you still said that for certain works, like online was okay to you, but for other works you need to show them in person. So I'm just curious about like the context of that model, of the gallery model, and like if you have other thoughts about how this can, I mean, because personally I think that it's already, having talked to other people about this. I mean, for example, I was talking to Willem Molesworth, who's doing the Suitcase Institute, and I did this installation with them, and he's kind of, and he and Isabel, his wife and partner in that, are presenting that as a kind of alternative model to this gallery context, and talking a lot about how the gallery model is also outdated slightly and changing in any case, and especially in a place like Hong Kong where real estate is so expensive. I'm just curious what both Peter and Jiaru think about like alternative models of presenting their work, I suppose, if not in a kind of traditional white view format.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, I've always been a very independent person. So I worked with galleries in the past, but then I was also not with a gallery for a while. And I'm quite content with that. I've always been a person that kind of makes things happen on my own. So and often the case, I didn't want to be tied down to a gallery with a restrictive contract and stuff, because I wanted to be kind of a free agent and be able to just do what I want. I'm with a gallery right now that I love, and it's because I know the people and their friends and I trust them. But so it works well for me. Yeah. But I'm still, we have, because they've known me for a long time, so they know how I work, so they know that I am my own little butterfly, and I'm going to be out doing my own little thing anyways. So, I think it's more about that. I think it's about relationships, which is how it should be around the world. If it's people that you can depend on and people that trust you and you trust them, then you're helping each other. But I think if you don't have that kind of relationship, I think if it's the standard, a gallery that's doing a show every 2 weeks and they don't really care about you, they just need to, and in Hong Kong is often the case, the rent is so high, they have to do so much turnover to afford their rent that they can't really nurture you and develop with you and grow with you. Then I think, that type of model might be dying, and I think it probably should be. Yeah,
it may not be such a bad thing in some cases. Jiaru, what do you think on this subject?
I think actually I know many young artists. They are in charge of selling their own works, like not depending on any galleries, and they're doing fine. For myself, I don't deal with gallery that often because I would rather find another job to support my life than to figure out a way to sell my artworks, because it's really difficult for me to sell my art because I don't like to deal with people in general, and and it's difficult to find someone who you trust to they understand you, understand your arts, and they help you grow and stuff. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'm too naive or something. I
don't think so at all. I think it's like any business, as well as an emotional relationship, you've got to get the right partner. If you, and as others have said, if you get a gallery that maybe can't afford to spend the time on you, or are being pushed by high rents and costs and things like that, then that's not going to work. But I do think there are some galleries, that really do invest, not just in their artists, but they invest in Hong Kong as well. And this whole culture of art galleries in Hong Kong over the last 8-9 years has been transformed. 10 years ago, it was a totally different landscape. And a lot of that has come from galleries who have nurtured and looked after their artists. And you can see that because I get it on the other side. I get galleries who really care about an artist, who will be contacting me and really giving me the information and making sure that I understand what that maybe a young emerging artist is all about. And that takes time and effort. So, I appreciate that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what about the art fair? I mean, that whole art fair situation, apart from the fact that I'm sure there's going to be some kind of resistance to large gatherings of people at fairs and public auctions, how do you see that changing? Or do you think the commercial element of something like Art Central or Art Basel is too attractive, too necessary for the market?
I think as long as there's going to be people from the mainland trying to launder their money to the West, Art Basel will have a very profitable home in Hong Kong.
Tell us what you really think, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I like everything. I love Art Basel and Art Central and all the attention that comes with it. I think it can be a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun parties. There's a lot of energy. People are coming in. There's a lot of that. But I mean, it is art fairs are what they are. I mean, they don't really pretend to be anything else other than what they are.
Yeah.
If you aren't under any false illusion that they're something different, then you just enjoy it and carry on. I think because of the tax rate, the tax issues in Hong Kong, and the way people want to move money around the world that might be otherwise difficult, Art Basel is it makes sense to be here. And depending on who knows what the future will have in store, but yeah, I think it'll be fine.
So what kind of longer term strategic questions do you think we should be asking ourselves, or you should be asking yourselves, about the art world and Hong Kong in particular? Peter, while you're on the screen, you can give us your measured opinion on this.
Oh, I don't know. Long-term strategic questions? I think the virus is probably the least of the concerns about people thinking about a long-term solution in Hong Kong and China, Greater China. So depends on your personal values and what you feel. And I think Hong Kong has an interesting future that I don't know if everybody really wants to be a part of. So I think there could be an interesting shift in the future, especially depending on the attractiveness of Hong Kong was always based on that there was so much opportunity here, there was so much money here, there was tons of things going on, so people would rationalize why they would pay so much in rent and why they would endure tiny apartments and high cost of living and pollution and the noise and stuff. And if those sources of income dry up, I can't speak to how many people would realistically, even physically, be able to stay and live in Hong Kong, let alone want to stay.
Shane, do you think people, this whole situation is going to make people think more about how art is really perceived by society in Hong Kong, particularly like the government, in terms of, say, a support to the art industry?
I don't know. It's really hard to say. I think that there's such a so much of what's happening in Hong Kong is supported somehow financially through private means. I mean, there's some other support here, but I mean, when you're asking about Art Basel, and there's also so much that happens as satellite support, of at least financial support to make projects happen that kind of go along with that. That it really depends, I think, what's happening with the entire economic situation of the city, and not to mention politically, or as Peter was saying, what we've been starting to kind of talk about as a culture here. And I mean, it's been talked about for a long time, but now it's really in the forefront. So there's been very little coming out of this that hasn't been privately supported, right? Particularly in the art world. In these months, I mean, in some countries, the government has actually put in money through various organizations to artists and supporting the creative arts. And I'm wondering,
whether there needs to be some kind of a shift away from this idea of art as something, decorative, beautiful, slightly fluffy, to, it is an essential element. It's certainly an essential element of business in Hong Kong. So why is it not being treated as an essential sector that deserves some kind of support as well?
Yeah, and I mean, when you go to so many other places in the world, I mean, this is drastically different than pretty much every other place I've lived and even been in the world, where I've always felt that what was lacking here is a really, really strong underground current, and I think the economic situation of the city also makes it almost impossible to kind of support a culture of young people like really doing things. I mean, I like Jiaru saying that she'd rather have another job than support herself through art. I mean, I think that's honestly, that's probably the best way for most people to kind of approach making things. Not to say that some people can't do it, but I think that is really going to, if people are making things out of not really from the economics of the situation, and even going back to the previous question about what's coming out of this, is I think it's, hopefully getting artists to and everyone to reconsider what they're doing and how to reapproach this, no matter what the situation is that we come into.
Well, we have a couple of questions that are really interesting. Alison Pickett, who's Hong Kong based art consultant who's at the moment in Italy, she's asked, she's written saying, I work with a lot of artists and I'm always fascinated by the music they listen to when working. What is Peter listening to on his headphones, and does that have an effect on the piece he's working on at that time?
Actually, yeah. Oddly enough, it's because my work is very meditative and precise and organized, but I generally am listening to a lot of like very fast, aggressive punk music and rock music and heavy metal, and it's like I don't know, it doesn't jive with most people that it makes any sense, but I grew up as a punk rock kid and I still love it. I listen to it all the time, and I'll just be like dancing and air drumming, and then I'll just go back to highly focused work.
That's fantastic. We have another question. Tasneem Salam, gallery owner based in London at the moment. Her comment is, obviously there is a market in Hong Kong which has developed over the past 10 years. Peter has his views on why, but do you think there has been a growth of a real collective base and appreciation of art? How does the ordinary Hong Kong community relate to art? And that's a question that all three of you could answer. But Peter, starting with you, you're on screen.
I think there has been a growing collector base. There's a growing shift. I mean, everyone who knows, I mean, it could be a patronizing sort of external view on Hong Kong, but the average Hong Kong person in this city didn't understand or appreciate art at all, from my perspective. It has been slowly changing, but it was not something that I felt was deemed valuable by the individual, especially coming from Canada, where a normal middle-income person would have a house full of paintings. They wouldn't be expensive paintings, but there would be a house full of paintings. And I had so many when I first moved here. People's apartments I would go to would just be bare white walls, and it was like I just didn't feel like there was an understanding. I think through education and family structure that art was something that was seen as important. It was just a hobby, or people didn't really understand that it wasn't something more than just an investment piece, that it was actually something beautiful that became part of you. But I think, you can see why there is so much political stress in Hong Kong is not an isolated incident. It's because the younger generation of this city is growing up very different from their parents' generation. It's sort of a rejection of that patriarchal top-down system, and people actually expressing themselves and wanting to be more of an individual instead of part of a collective. That is changing the way people appreciate art and music and culture. And I mean, it's going to take time, but I think it's having a very positive effect. And there is a growing appreciation for art and culture and music, and the collector base will grow along with it for sure.
Yeah. Jiaru, what do you think?
Personally, I have good faith in Hong Kong young generation because might be more critical, and I think we'll become more open-minded. And I also believe in the power of art. So
exactly, yes.
We should not give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's you know, going to be like a wave of pent-up demand with people, particularly younger generations, wanting to enjoy beautiful or meaningful art? Do you think there'll be a change in taste, or maybe a slowdown, but a change in taste for the better?
Yeah.
Yeah. There will be change, I think.
Yeah.
Change is inevitable.
Yeah. Shane, what about you? Anything you would like to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that as well. I think the young generation here is you know, showing something, and I do think that things are changing always. I mean, things change, you know, no matter what's happening. But I think, yeah, between this and everything else, like something's gonna come out of this, and I think that will be somehow in a better place. I feel, at least from my relative position.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've really been struck by is how so many people who are at home and have time on their hands are turning to much more creative things. And you know, they're not doing I don't know, they're doing things like they're baking, or they're making things, or they're taking up knitting, or some people are painting. And I think for me, there is, and people are reading, I mean, which is fantastic, you know, especially someone who writes books. I think it's very good. But, you know, I think there is maybe what I'm hoping will come out of this is a greater appreciation of what goes into making art. So, you know, whether it's a painting or something digital or a sculpture or whatever it is, that people who have had time to read, to think, and a lot of people are participating on talks like we're having right now, and hearing your perspective on things. You don't have to agree with each other, but you've all got your own perspective. I think that's really, really helpful. So we're out of time now, so I just want to end off by thanking Peter, Shane and Jiaru for participating today. And, you know, I for one am very much looking forward to getting back to actually seeing your artwork in person, and hoping that that isn't too long or too far away. And I'd also like to thank Art Power Hong Kong for arranging today's event, and thanking everyone who's been sending in comments and participating in our talk. So thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.